This video was inspired by this commenter. Thanks for your support. Created by Anthony Rizzo, Sydney, Australia. On the 1st of February 1927 to the 12th of June 1931, the Northern Territory was splitted into two territories on the 20th parallel line due to the North Australian Act of 1926. This created the short-lived territories of North Australia and Central Australia. The Act was repealed on the 12th of June 1931, which reunited the two territories as the Northern Territory again. And that's it. Bye! Oh, you want to know why this happened? Okay, some historical context. Don't get excited. Back in the 1910s, Australia's population was about 5 million. Most of the population was living in the eastern parts of Australia and a bit in the south and southwest. The rest of the land had barely anyone living except for the wildlife. Over time, a small settlement of about 3,500 people was brewing in the Northern Territory, particularly in the port town of Darwin. Prior to 1911, the Northern Territory was part of South Australia. The province was then split because it was too big for the state to govern the north and south. Hence, this created the Northern Territory under the authority of the Commonwealth of Australia. However, the Commonwealth didn't think too much of the Northern Territory. Due to the territory's population size, there was a lack/neglect of infrastructure. Also, the Northern Territory was taxed without any representative in Parliament, so it kind of was a taxation without representation. No wait, that's exactly what happened, which kind of led to the Darwin Rebellion. I swear at least one American is smiling at this. 3 years after the rebellion, the Northern Territory Representation Act of 1922 was passed with Harold George Nelson, who led the rebellion, being the representative of the Northern Territory, even though the representative had no voting rights until 1968. Regardless, the new focus was on infrastructure and public works to the territory. Okay, context is over. Are you happy now? So, in 1926, the Australian Minister of Home Affairs, Sir George Pearce, thought the Northern Territory was too large to govern during a time of development, which he wasn't wrong about, but not particularly right. But anyway, soon in 1926, the Northern Australian Act of 1926 was asserted, then passed in 1927. The Act was intended, and I quote from the Act's document, an Act to make further provisions for the development and government of the Northern Territory of Australia and for other purposes. If you have time, have a read or just skim read the document if you like, it's in the description. Over time, the territories would build. In 1929, a new railroad and telegraph line was being built, connecting between the North Port of Darwin to the south of Adelaide. Along its rail line, it passed a small remote town in the Central Territory called Alice Springs. I wonder if they get any tourism in the middle of nowhere. In 1931, Robert Weddell, who shockingly I can't find a photo of him after World War I, wanted the two territories reunited. Now, I can't get a clear answer to why. Best guess is with better communication and travel, there was no need to keep the territories split. So, on the 12th of June 1931, the Northern Territory Administration of 1931 was passed, which states from the document, an act to amend the Northern Territory Administration Act 1910 to 1926 to repeal the Northern Australian Act 1926 and for other purposes. The two territories were reunited as the Northern Territory once again. You know, this makes me wonder, what if the two territories were still split? Thank you for watching to the end of the video. Subscribe to be updated for new Riz Australian history content. Leave a like, it brings a smile to my face. If you have a good suggestion for an Australian topic, leave it in the comments below. And I hope this is the last time I talk about Darwin for some time.